When he reached the yard gate and found the padlock seized with frost, he felt the strain of being alive and wished he'd stayed in bed, but he made himself carry on. How often do we feel the strain of being alive? I love that phrase. It seems like we often carry a lot of weight in this life, and we don't realize the weight that we're carrying until we meet an obstacle, until we meet the frozen lock in the yard. It is in the pause that is caused by the obstacle, by the frozen lock, where we're able to recognize the weight that we're carrying. That quote was incredibly overwhelming to me when I read it. It's from a book called Small Things Like These. Recently, I've found myself buried in books about philosophy and spirituality and religion, and those are all good, and I don't regret reading any of them, but I was recently reminded by someone close to me the power of story. And so I picked up this book, and it was a short read, but it was incredibly powerful, and when I read that line, it jumped out at me, and I wrote it down. I wrote down that line. And the reason that quote was so powerful is because I felt parallels from Bill's life to my life. And while my life is nowhere near as difficult as his, I think we all experience that strain of being alive. And I try and do my best to get myself out of my comfort zone and to cover big and heavy topics on this channel. And these topics have often caused me to pause and wish that I had stayed in bed. I often think how much easier it would have been to stay in bed, stay asleep, under the covers, and just go through the motions without a single critical thought. And now, before I go any further, I want to be clear. I do not claim to be awakened. I do not claim to be enlightened. I don't want to make it seem like the path that I'm walking is necessary for anyone. But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't think it was right. And I think that's why that quote hit so hard. And the quote reminded me of a quote from Marcus Aurelius. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And so the culmination of those two quotes, to me, conveys the idea that along every path worth traveling, you're going to run into obstacles. Obstacles that cause you to feel the bite of the cold, that makes you long for your warm bed and your blanket and the comfort of sleep, of avoiding the path that you're on. And so that pause that is caused by the frozen lock, the obstacle that causes you to pause, demands commitment. It demands you to choose whether or not to go back to bed and go back to sleep, or whether to press on. I hope that quote that I shared and the thoughts that I shared today were interesting or thought-provoking, or maybe even a little inspirational. The obstacle is the way, as Ryan Holiday says. Anyways, if that was interesting, thought-provoking, I hope you stick around, and I'll catch you in the next video.